The research vessel Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel and entered orbit around 7. The planet below was covered in thick red forests and wide golden plains. It was beautiful in a wild and dangerous way. Dr. Molly Grant stood at the observation window and watched the world grow larger. She had spent 15 years studying alien species, but she had never visited space before. No human had. This was the first diplomatic mission between their two species, and everyone on board knew how important it was. "Nervous?" asked Commander Jake as he walked up beside her. Molly smiled a little, excited and yes, a little nervous to have a reputation. Jake nodded slowly. They were known across the galaxy as fierce protectors. They were tall, covered in short gray fur, with powerful arms and sharp teeth. Other species called them the guardians of, but not because they guarded the planet. They guarded their children. Cubs were considered sacred, and the adults would kill anyone who threatened them. "Just remember the briefing," Jake said. "We follow their rules exactly. No mistakes." An hour later, the human delegation stood on the surface of 7. The air smelled like copper and pine. A group waited for them at the edge of a great stone city. The buildings rose high into the sky, carved from dark rock and decorated with symbols Molly did not recognize. At the front of the group stood a female who was taller than the rest. Her fur was silver with streaks of white, and her eyes were a deep amber color. She wore a long robe made of something that looked like woven metal. "I am High Matriarch," she said. Her voice was deep and calm. "You are the humans." Jake stepped forward and gave a small bow. "I am Commander Jake. This is Dr. Molly Grant, our and Lieutenant Ben Carter, our security officer. We are honored to be here." Studied them for a long moment. Her eyes moved from one human to the next, and Molly felt like she was being measured and judged. Finally, spoke again. "Before we continue, you must understand one rule. This rule is absolute. There are no exceptions." "We are listening," Jake said. "You will not approach our cubs," said. "You will not touch them. You will not speak to them. You will not look at them for more than a moment. If you break this rule, you will die. We will not ask questions. We will not listen to explanations. You will simply die." The words hung in the air like a blade. Molly felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her face calm. Beside stood an older male with dark gray fur and scars across his face. His name was Elder, and he was staring at the humans with open hatred. "They tried to take our cubs once," growled. "We burned their ships and salted their worlds. The Helix Collective looked at our young with hunger in their eyes. We taught them what fear means. You are soft creatures, humans, weak and emotional. We do not trust you near our children." Jake remained calm. "We understand and we respect your laws. We are here to learn and to build friendship, nothing more." Seemed satisfied with this answer. She turned and led the group into the city. As they walked through the wide streets, Molly noticed how they watched them. Some seemed curious, others seemed afraid, a few looked angry. The guest compound was a set of stone buildings near the edge of the city. It was comfortable but simple. There were beds, tables, and equipment for their research. A high wall surrounded the compound, and guards stood at every entrance. "You will stay here," said. "My people will bring you food and anything else you need. Do not wander the city alone. Do not cause problems." "Thank you for your hospitality," Molly said warmly. Looked at her for a moment, and something in her expression softened just a little. Then she turned and walked away, her guards following close behind. That evening, the humans gathered in the main building to discuss their plans. Jake sat at the head of the table while Molly and Ben reviewed their notes. "They are more tense than I expected," Ben said. He was a quiet man with steady hands and sharp eyes. "They really do not want us here." "Can you blame them?" Molly asked. "Every species they have met has tried to use their cubs against them. They have learned to trust no one." "Then we will have to earn their trust," Jake said, slowly and carefully. Molly nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. During the welcoming ceremony, she had seen something strange. Behind one of the stone pillars, 3 small faces had been watching the humans. They were cubs, with soft fur and wide, curious eyes. They had not looked afraid. They had looked fascinated. And just before led them away, Molly could have sworn that one of the cubs smiled at her. That night, Molly lay in her bed and listened to the sounds of the alien world outside her window. The wind carried strange calls and distant songs. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Then she heard something else, a soft scratching sound like small claws on stone. She sat up slowly and looked toward the window. The shutters were slightly open, and through the gap she could see 2 bright eyes staring back at her. Molly's heart beat faster, but she did not move. She did not call for help. She simply watched. The eyes blinked once, then disappeared into the darkness. Molly lay back down and stared at the ceiling. The cubs had followed them. The sacred, protected, never-to-be-touched cubs had followed the humans back to their compound. And something told her this was only the beginning. 3 days passed on 7. The humans met with scientists and shared information about their worlds. They ate strange foods and learned new words. Everything was polite and careful, but there was always a wall between them and their hosts. And every night the cubs came back. Ben was the first to catch them properly. He was checking the compound's perimeter when he heard giggling from behind a storage building. He walked around the corner slowly and found 3 small cubs hiding in the shadows. They froze when they saw him. Their eyes went wide with fear, and for a moment Ben thought they would run. But they did not run. The largest cub, who had bold eyes and messy fur, stepped forward and tilted his head. He studied Ben like a scientist studying a strange new creature. Ben knew the rules. He knew what would happen if they found out. But he also saw 3 children who were curious and brave and just wanted to see something new. So he did not report them. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of dried fruit from his rations. He placed it on the ground, stepped back, and waited. The bold cub crept forward and sniffed the fruit. Then he grabbed it and shoved it into his mouth. His eyes went wide with delight. He turned to the other 2 cubs and made excited sounds. Ben smiled a little, then walked away without a word. The next night, he left 3 pieces of fruit near the entrance. The night after that, he left 5. By the 4th night, the cubs were waiting for him. Molly discovered them on the 5th day. She was working in her small laboratory, studying plant samples she had collected, when she heard a soft sound behind her. She turned and found the smallest cub sitting on the floor, staring at her holographic display of alien flowers. The cub was tiny, with soft golden fur and enormous dark eyes. He looked up at Molly with an expression of pure wonder. Molly's first instinct was to call for help, but then she saw how the cub was looking at the flowers. There was no fear in his eyes, no danger, just a child amazed by something beautiful. She sat down on the floor slowly and carefully. She did not reach for him. She did not speak loudly. She just sat there and waited. The cub watched her for a long time. Then slowly he crawled closer. "Hello there," Molly said softly. "My name is Molly. What is your name?" The cub tilted his head. He said in a small voice, "Hello, do you like the flowers?" Nodded eagerly. He pointed at the holographic display. "Pretty, very pretty." Molly smiled and changed the display to show different plants from different worlds. Gasped with each new image, making happy sounds and clapping his small hands together. Soon the other 2 cubs appeared. The bold one was named, and the shy one was named. They joined on the floor and watched the flower show with wide eyes. Molly did not touch them. She did not grab them or try to keep them. She just talked to them softly and answered their questions. "Why are you so soft?" asked, poking her arm. "Humans do not have fur," Molly explained. "We have smooth skin instead." "Does it hurt?" "No, it is just different." stayed quiet for most of the time, but she watched everything carefully. She seemed to be studying Molly, trying to understand her. When the sun began to rise, the cubs grew nervous. They knew they had to leave before the adults woke up. "Will you tell them?" asked. His voice was worried. Molly shook her head. "No, I will not tell anyone." The cubs looked at each other with surprise. Other species had always reported them. Other species had tried to use them as leverage or had threatened to expose them to their parents. But this human simply smiled and promised to keep their secret. They left through the window, and Molly watched them disappear into the early morning light. That evening she told Jake and Ben what had happened. They sat together in Jake's quarters, speaking in low voices. "This is dangerous," Jake said. "If they find out, they will kill us." "I know," Molly said. "But what was I supposed to do? Scream and frighten them, chase them away?" Ben shook his head. "She did the right thing. Those cubs are not afraid of us. That means something." Jake rubbed his face with his hands. He looked tired and worried. "We need to return them safely. We need to find a way to end this without anyone getting hurt." "The cubs do not want to stop coming," Molly said quietly. "Fell asleep in my lap today. He just curled up and fell asleep like it was the most natural thing in the world." The room went silent. Jake stared at her for a long moment. "A cub fell asleep in your lap?" "Yes." "A species that has killed entire civilization for threatening their children?" "Yes." Jake leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "Then we protect them. We keep them safe, and we find a way to return them without causing a war." Ben nodded, agreed. Molly felt a warmth spread through her chest. She did not know how this would end, but she knew one thing for certain. Those cubs trusted them, and she would never betray that trust. 1 week passed, and the cubs came every night without fail. They arrived after the guards changed shifts, slipping through gaps in the wall that only small bodies could fit through. They stayed until the sky began to lighten, then disappeared before anyone could catch them. And with each visit, the bonds grew stronger. Had attached himself to Jake. The bold young cub followed the commander everywhere inside the compound, copying his movements and studying his behavior. When Jake stood with his hands behind his back, did the same. When Jake spoke in his calm, steady voice, tried to match his tone. "You are a leader," said one night. "I can tell the others listen to you." Jake smiled a little. "I try to be a good one." "What makes a good leader?" Jake thought about this carefully. A good leader protects his people. He makes hard choices so others do not have to, and he always puts his team before himself. Nodded seriously, as if storing this information away for later. "I want to be a leader someday." "I think you will be," Jake said. "You are brave and curious. Those are good qualities." His chest puffed up with pride, and Jake felt something warm in his heart. This cub reminded him of his younger brother, who had always asked too many questions and never stopped exploring. Had chosen Ben as her favorite human. The shy cub spent hours watching him work on small repairs and equipment checks. Ben was a quiet person who did not talk much and seemed to find comfort in that. One night Ben showed her a simple puzzle game on his data pad. It was a game for children where you moved colored shapes to match patterns, studied it carefully, then solved it in under a minute. Ben stared at her. "That was very fast." Looked down, embarrassed. "I like puzzles." "Then I will find harder ones for you." From that night on, Ben spent his evenings creating new puzzles for her. He made them more difficult each time, but she always solved them. She never bragged about it. She simply smiled quietly and waited for the next challenge. Belonged to Molly completely. The smallest cub had decided that she was his favorite person in the universe, and nothing would change his mind. He sat in her lap while she worked. He held her hand when they walked through the compound. He cried when she had to leave him, even for a few minutes. Molly had never had children of her own, but holding felt natural in a way she could not explain. "Why are you so warm?" asked one night, pressing his face against her shoulder. "All humans are warm," Molly said softly. "Our bodies make a lot of heat." "I like it, you feel safe." Molly's eyes grew wet, but she blinked the tears away. "You are safe with me, I promise." They began to notice changes in the cubs. During the day and were calmer than usual. They slept more deeply. They smiled more often. Their parents and teachers were confused but pleased. "The cubs seem happier," one of the scientists mentioned during a meeting. "We do not know why." Molly kept her face neutral, but inside her heart was racing. Elder was not so easily fooled. The old warrior watched the humans with growing suspicion. He noticed how the cubs yawned during lessons. He noticed how they looked toward the human compound when they thought no one was watching. "Something is wrong," said to one evening. "The humans are hiding something." Frowned, "They have followed our rules. They have not approached the cubs." "Then why do the cubs act so strange?" Did not have an answer. That night she visited the human compound unexpectedly. Jake met her at the entrance, calm and polite as always. "Hi, matriarch," he said with a small bow. "How can we help you?" Amber eyes studied him carefully. "Your people seem comfortable here. Your hospitality has been generous. And you have had no problems, no difficulties." Jake shook his head. "None at all." Stepped closer. She was taller than Jake and her presence was powerful and heavy. "My cubs have been acting strange lately. Happy, content. They sleep deeply and wake up smiling. It is unusual." "That sounds like a good thing," Jake said. "It is unusual," repeated. "And I do not like unusual things, especially when outsiders are nearby." She searched his face for any sign of deception, but Jake remained perfectly calm. After a long moment, stepped back. "I will be watching you, Commander, very closely." She turned and walked away into the darkness. That night when the cubs arrived was upset. "Mother suspects something," he said. "She asked me many questions today." "What did you tell her?" Jake asked. "Nothing, I am good at keeping secrets." Grinned, but his eyes were worried. Held Ben's hand tightly. "We do not want to stop coming. You are different from the others. You are warm inside." Was already asleep in Molly's arms, his small body rising and falling with each breath. Jake looked at his crew, and he saw the same thing in all their eyes. These cubs had become part of them. Sending them away would feel like losing family. But the danger was growing, was suspicious, was watching, and one mistake could cost them everything. "We have to be more careful," Jake said quietly. "Whatever happens, we protect these cubs, even if it means protecting them from their own people." Ben nodded. Molly held closer. Outside, the twin moons of 7 rose into the sky, casting silver light across the compound. And somewhere in the shadows, Elder stood watching. The announcement came during breakfast. A messenger arrived at the human compound with a formal scroll. Jake read it while Molly and Ben waited nervously. "High Matriarch will conduct a formal inspection of the human quarters tomorrow morning," Jake said. His voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. "She wishes to ensure our comfort and safety." They all knew what it really meant, was looking for evidence. "We have 1 day to prepare," Ben said. "We need to remove any trace of the cubs." Molly nodded. "The cubs cannot come tonight, it is too dangerous." But they all knew the cubs would come anyway. They always did. That evening, the humans worked quickly. They cleaned every room and removed anything that might seem suspicious. Ben collected the treat wrappers he had left near the entrance. Molly washed the blankets where had slept. Jake inspected every corner of the compound. When darkness fell, the cubs arrived as expected. "You cannot stay tonight," Jake told gently. "Your mother is coming tomorrow to search our quarters. If she finds any sign of you, we will all be in danger." His face fell, But we want to stay, we will be quiet, we will hide. It is too risky, Ben said. One mistake and everything ends. His eyes filled with tears. She did not cry out loud, but the tears rolled down her furry cheeks silently. Molly felt her heart breaking. Did not understand. He was too young to grasp the danger. He simply climbed into Molly's lap and wrapped his small arms around her neck. I stay with Molly, he said firmly. You have to go home tonight. No, I stay. Molly held him close and tried to explain, but would not listen. In the end, she carried him to the wall and handed him to. Take care of your brother, she said softly. I will see you again, I promise. Took in his arms, and the smallest cub began to cry. His wails echoed across the compound as the 3 cubs disappeared into the night. Molly stood at the wall for a long time, listening to the fatting sounds of tears. The next morning arrived with 12 armed guards. She walked through the compound slowly, examining every room with sharp eyes. Elder walked beside her, his face twisted with suspicion. Jake followed them calmly, answering questions and opening doors when asked. Ben stood guard near the entrance, his expression neutral. Molly waited in her laboratory, trying to keep her hands from shaking. Inspected the sleeping quarters first. She looked under beds and inside storage containers. She ran her claws along the walls, searching for hidden spaces. Your quarters are very clean, she said to Jake. We believe in order and discipline, Jake replied. Moved to the common area, then the kitchen. She found nothing unusual. The guards searched every corner but came up empty. Finally, entered Molly's laboratory. The room was filled with plant samples and scientific equipment. Holographic displays showed images of alien flowers and trees. It looked exactly like a workspace should look. You study plants, said. Yes, High Matriarch. The flora of 7 is beautiful and unique. Walked around the room slowly. She stopped near a storage closet in the corner. Her hand reached for the door handle. Molly's heart stopped. She had checked that closet last night. She knew it was empty, but what if she had missed something? What if there was some trace of the cubs she had overlooked? His claws closed around the handle. Suddenly, a loud crash came from outside. Shouting filled the air, and one of the guards rushed into the laboratory. High Matriarch, one of the perimeter walls has collapsed. There may be security concerns. His eyes narrowed. She released the closet door and turned away. Show me. She swept out of the laboratory with her guards following behind. Molly let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Outside, they found a section of wall that had fallen inward. Large stones lay scattered across the ground, and dust filled the air. The guards searched the area but found nothing dangerous. How did this happen? Demanded. No one had an answer. But Molly noticed something strange. High on a nearby rooftop, she saw a small figure watching them. It was his bold eyes gleaming in the morning light. He had caused the distraction. He had saved them. Completed her inspection without finding any evidence. She left the compound with a frustrated expression and followed behind her like a shadow. That night the cubs did not come. But Elder did. The old warrior moved silently through the darkness, following the same path the cubs always used. He found the gaps in the wall, the hidden roots, the secret entrance to the compound. He waited in the shadows, patient as a hunter. Near midnight he heard small footsteps. The cubs were coming after all. Watched as and slipped through the wall and hurried toward the main building. He followed them silently, his eyes sharp in the darkness. Through a window, he saw everything. He saw run to Molly and leap into her arms. He saw the human woman hold the cub gently, stroking his fur and humming a soft melody. He saw sit beside Ben, showing him a puzzle she had made herself. He saw standing tall beside Jake, listening to the commander speak about leadership and courage. Had expected to find manipulation. He had expected fear or control or some kind of dark magic the humans were using on the cubs. Instead, he saw peace. He saw cubs who were loved, cubs who felt safe, cubs who had chosen to be here not because they were forced, but because they wanted to be. Fell asleep in Molly's arms, and the human woman began to sing. Her voice was soft and warm, and the melody was unlike anything had ever heard. It was not a song. It was something alien and strange. But it was beautiful. Stepped back from the window. His hands were trembling. His mind was racing. He turned and walked away into the darkness, saying nothing. He did not raise the alarm. The final day of the human mission arrived with a blood-red sunrise. The horizon was scheduled to depart at noon. Crates of research materials and diplomatic gifts were being loaded onto transport shuttles. The humans moved through the compound quietly, packing their belongings and preparing for the journey home. Molly stood at her window and watched the sky change colors. She had not slept. None of them had. The cubs had stayed until dawn, refusing to leave. Had cried for hours, begging Molly to take him with her. Had tried to be brave, but his voice had cracked when he said goodbye. Had simply held Ben's hand and would not let go. In the end, Jake had carried them to the wall himself. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Now the compound was empty and quiet. The humans had just a few hours left on 7. Then the gates burst open. High Matriarch stormed into the compound with 20 armed warriors at her back. Her silver fur was standing on end, and her amber eyes burned with fury. Elder walked beside her, his expression unreadable. "Do not move," commanded. Her voice echoed off the stone walls. Jake stepped forward with his hands raised. "High Matriarch, what is the meaning of this?" "You know what you have done, human." Claws extended, long and sharp. "Elder told me everything. You have been meeting with our cubs in secret. You have been luring them to your compound every night." The warriors raised their weapons. Molly felt her heart pounding in her chest. Ben's hand moved toward his sidearm, but Jake shook his head slightly. "We did not lure them," Jake said calmly. "They came to us on their own." Lies stepped closer, her teeth bared. "No cub would willingly approach outsiders. You have manipulated them somehow. You have poisoned their minds." "We did nothing to them except show them kindness." Laughed bitterly. "Kindness? Humans know nothing of kindness. You are weak, soft creatures who cannot even protect yourselves. How could you possibly offer anything to our children?" Before Jake could respond, a small voice cried out from behind the warriors. "Mother, stop." The crowd parted, and 3 small figures pushed their way through, and ran past the armed guards and placed themselves between the humans and their own people. His eyes went wide. "What are you doing? Get away from them." Stood tall, his small body trembling but his voice steady. "No, we will not let you hurt them. They are dangerous. They have tricked you." "They have not tricked us." His voice was high and clear. He was crying again, but he did not run. "Molly is kind. She holds me when I am scared. She sings to me when I cannot sleep. She makes me feel safe." Spoke next, her quiet voice carrying across the courtyard. "Ben teaches me puzzles. He does not talk much, but he listens. He never makes me feel stupid for being quiet. He makes me feel like it is okay to be who I am." Looked directly at his mother. "Jake teaches me about leadership. He says a good leader protects his people and puts others before himself. He says strength is not about fighting. It is about caring for those who need you." Stood frozen. Her warriors looked at each other in confusion. "These humans are not weak," continued. "They are the strongest people I have ever met, not because of their weapons or their technology, because of their hearts." His voice cracked. "You do not understand. Outsiders have always wanted to hurt you. Every species we have met has tried to use our cubs against us." "Not the humans," said. He walked over to Molly and took her hand. "Molly could have told everyone about us. She could have used us to get what she wanted, but she did not. She kept our secret because she loves us." The word hung in the air like a prayer. Looked at Molly for the first time. Really looked at her. She saw a small, soft creature with no claws and no fangs. She saw wet eyes and trembling hands. She saw someone who was terrified of dying but refused to let go of the child holding onto her. "Is this true?" asked quietly. "You could have used them against us." Molly nodded slowly. "Yes, but I never considered it, not even for a moment." "Why not?" Molly looked down at, then back at. "Because they trusted me, and I would die before I betrayed that trust." The courtyard was silent for a long time. The warriors shifted uncomfortably. Elder watched with sharp eyes, his face still unreadable. Finally lowered her claws. Her shoulders dropped and something in her expression changed. "All my life I have protected our cubs from the galaxy," she said slowly. "I have taught them that outsiders are dangerous, that softness is weakness, that trust leads only to pain." She walked forward until she stood in front of Jake. "But my cubs do not listen to my warnings. They do not fear you. They run to you, not away from you." She paused, her voice heavy. "Perhaps I was wrong about humans." Jake met her eyes. "We never wanted to cause trouble, High Matriarch. We just saw 3 children who were curious and lonely. We could not turn them away." Nodded slowly. "No, I suppose you could not." She turned to her warriors and raised her hand. "Lower your weapons. The humans are not our enemies." They obeyed, though many of them looked confused. Looked at her cubs, who were still clustered around the humans. Was in Molly's arms again, his face pressed against her neck. Was holding Ben's hand with both of hers. Stood beside Jake, standing as tall as he could. "The humans must leave today," said. "Their mission is complete, but perhaps this does not have to be goodbye forever." Looked up with wide, hopeful eyes. "We can see them again." Hesitated for a long moment. Then she sighed and nodded. "When the next diplomatic mission arrives, you may visit them, if they will have you." Molly laughed through her tears. "They will always be welcome, always." The goodbye was long and painful. Cried until he had no more tears. Gave Ben a small puzzle cube she had made herself. Shook Jake's hand like an adult, then broke down and hugged him tightly. As the humans walked toward their shuttle, stopped Jake with a hand on his shoulder. "Commander, what you did was dangerous. You risked everything for 3 small cubs who meant nothing to you." Jake looked back at the children waving goodbye. "They meant everything to us," he said simply. Watched the shuttle rise into the sky and disappear among the stars. Elder stood beside her, silent as always. "The galaxy warned us about humans," said quietly. "They said humans were too emotional, too soft, too weak to survive." Nodded and now. Watched the last light of the shuttle fade away. "Perhaps we were the ones who needed the warning."